Hi, everyone. Welcome to our summer market event. I'm just going to give it a few seconds here as people join our session. Welcome. If you haven't gotten a beverage already, feel free to run off and get something while we wait for all of the other attendees to join. So thank you again for joining our AC Summer Market. As you know, this is beer, bubbles, and buddies. Sorry, I always have to I had to write that down because that is a mouthful there. So this is our beer, buddies, and bubbles session. So I'm just going to give it a few more seconds as people stroll into this session. And I see so many familiar names. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And for those that have turned on your camera, I miss your faces. So thank you so much for turning on your cameras. This is great as everyone rolls in. And for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Bonnie from the college's events team. I probably should have led with that, but I thought that most of you might know me already. So gonna give it a few more seconds before starting. And I hope that some of you were able to tune in to the welcome session this morning. And I heard that there was some great music taking place there as well. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. We do ask at the moment for our attendees to stay muted, but we encourage you to turn on your cameras because we want to see you, and seeing your faces already. It's so nice to see all of you, especially in the summer. We don't get to connect often, so this is amazing having you all tune in right now. Perfect. Awesome. So we're going to start our session. As mentioned, this is our beer, bubbles, and buddies as part of our AC Summer Market today. My name is Bonnie, and I am from the events team here at the college. And today we'll be hearing from Josh McJannett, co-founder of Dominion City Brewing Company. Today, Josh will be speaking about community building through food and drink. He will also be doing a quick tutorial on pairing beer or flavored seltzer water with local in-season produce. So as mentioned, if you haven't had a chance already, go grab your cold drink. I'm not going to specify what it is that you go and have, but go grab your cold beverage before we begin. And I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. And thank you so much, Kel. If you can keep letting people in from the waiting room, it's lovely to see our attendee number growing as our session begins. So as mentioned, with our few housekeeping items, we also do have other live virtual AC market events happening throughout the day. So if you haven't had a chance to already, check out the events calendar. I know Kelly is going to be she's either placed the link in the chat or it will be coming very soon. Take a look. There is an event or a workshop for everyone today. So if you haven't registered for other things taking place in the afternoon, be sure to check out that site because there's so many amazing vendors that we've invited for AC Summer Market. And there is closed captioning in English if needed. So I'm sure all of you are Zoom experts already. You can turn on the closed captioning by pressing the CC button or the CC icon located along the bottom of your screen there. So I'll give you guys a few seconds just to get yourself sorted. Feel free also, you can enjoy this session in speaker view, but if you want to see some of your colleagues or students or anything like that, feel free to take a gander in gallery view as well. Okay. And as mentioned, we do have Josh here. Josh has a quick little presentation for us. And then afterwards, we do invite all of you to engage in a live Q&A portion with Josh. So if you have any questions or comments, save them to the end. And then we'll definitely have an engaging Q&A sessions towards the end of the event. And for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, but hopefully we all are, you can either comment or ask your questions by raising your virtual hand. And then I'll call on you to unmute yourself. Or you can also keep the comments coming or the questions coming in the chat, and then I'll bring those to Josh's attention as well. And this event is being recorded, and the recording, if you wanted to refer to it later or share with others, it will be hosted on the AC Hub on-demand website in the coming days. And that link is also at some point coming into the chat soon. So if you want to refer to this later, the recording will be available to you. And now, for the guest star of this session, I'm going to say it again because I love the way that we've themed this event, to our Beer, Buddies, and Bubble event. We have Josh McJannett, co-founder of Dominion City Brewery and City Seltzer. And for those of you that don't know, Dominion City Brewing Company was born out of a thirst for a beer that knew its neighbors. And this is what Josh set forth to create when he conceived the microbrewery. Community building and cross collaboration is incredibly important to Josh. He believes in connecting his customers with the land and the people that make their product possible. For Josh, Dominion City Beer is brewed for the community and best enjoyed while in Ottawa. And if you haven't had a chance already, go check it out. And it just so happened that I ended up hosting this event, but me and my partner are also loyal customers of Dominion. I don't know if Josh recognizes us at all, but go check them out. At some point, we're going to be placing their social tags in the chat as well. So you can follow them, you can check out their website. There's a lot of great stuff that's going on in there. So without further ado, over to you, Josh, and welcome to AC Summer Market.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be with you guys. This is great. Listen, thanks so much for the introduction as well. Dominion City Brewing Company has been going will be 7 in a couple weeks' time. But actually, some of our origins actually trace back to Algonquin College. Early on when we were envisioning the brewery and making a plan for a community-built brewery, part of how we got ready was actually taking the beer course at the School of Hospitality at Algonquin College. So, while we were homebrewing in my backyard, sometimes not always terribly successfully in the early days, we were also learning and studying beer, and the college is a great resource. It was a great place to come and learn. And, even though I, was out of post-secondary school at that time, to be able to take what essentially amounted to a night course at the college was really great. So a lot of how we talk about beer and where we started traces its roots back to Algonquin. So really cool to be with you. Just give you, a kind of a Coles Notes. For those who don't know us, we're in the East End of Ottawa. We got the keys to our location on a very snowy January 1st in 2014. And we got our doors open later that August. We took over a t-shirt printing factory and created it into a brewery. Looking around on that snowy day, it did not appear that we were going to have a lot of people coming to see us in the back of this industrial park. And so we figured, we'll have to be good at selling beer on tap. 7 years later, we have a beer garden outside, and the neighborhood in our hyper local community has been like a huge jet fuel to propel us forward, showing up, making us kind of a community watering hole. And I think maybe because we felt so remote early on, we also felt a certain amount of responsibility to get out behind our own walls and go and introduce ourselves to people. And that's really been the best thing we ever did. Fast forward to kind of the last 18 months, I think we've really survived because our community has shown up for us. And I don't think that's necessarily unique for small businesses in Ottawa. I think a lot of folks have benefited from that kind of loyalty, but it's been essential for us. We basically had to completely upend our business and become an e-commerce business and a home delivery business. And what used to be a tap room was made into a makeshift Amazon-style fulfillment center for beer every day. And our tap room servers wound up deriving deliveries. It's been one to kind of reflect on lately, but none of it would have worked if we hadn't had our community pulling for us. And so when I hear folks like Bonnie tell us that they enjoy what we do and feel loyal about it, it really is like a huge difference. So that's been really exciting. It's not a secret. Obviously, we started by making beer, and I brought some of that to talk about today. The other thing that's a little bit newer is a product that was born at a beer festival, actually, that has nothing to do with beer. We launched a company last September called City Seltzer, and we make a non-alcoholic flavored sparkling water. We make it here in Ottawa at the brewery. And to be honest with you, I don't know that we could have ever, you make 5-year plans for businesses. This was not in the 5-year plan. But as I say, we right before the pandemic started, we were hosting an international beer festival in February outside in Ottawa. So you can reflect on whether that was a smart idea or not. But one of the things we did when we were bringing breweries from around the world here in the winter and bringing a couple hundred folks under a big tent to enjoy some of what I consider to be the best beer in the world, was we realized we didn't want anybody getting too ahead of themselves for an all-evening beer festival. So we canned up some flavored sparkling water, and unbeknownst to me, that became sort of the hit of the festival. And people were asking us where they could get more. So this little extra we did just to have out as a courtesy for our guests wound up kind of sparking an idea for another product line. And it's been growing like crazy, and we've been having a lot of fun doing it. For those of you who haven't been over to cityseltzer.ca, the brand is kind of fun. It's meant to be light. It's meant to be kind of just engaging and positive. And, the flavors are a little bit of what you'd expect and a little bit of something different that you don't necessarily see all the time. So we make 4 flavors all the time. City Citrus is yuzu and mandarin. Berry Whip is vanilla, boysenberry. Orange Cream is orange and vanilla, and Cool Melon is actually cucumber and cantaloupe, which is sort of the unsuspecting dark horse that folks don't necessarily think they want, but certainly when it comes to pairing with food and cocktail making, I think Cool Melon is like my first across the finish line choice. It's just like so versatile, and it's got a lot of complexity, and you don't necessarily expect it. But it's been really fun kind of digging back into where we started 7 years ago, just building a thing and trying to share it with people and get it out in the world. It's been really cool to kind of have some of that energy going again. So City Seltzer's been a really fun project for that. I will kind of just touch on, and by the way, I'm happy to make most of this be more conversational, and I know Bonnie can help me make sure I don't miss questions, but I'll kind of maybe share a little bit of what I like eating and drinking together here, and then maybe we can just open it up to hear from folks about stuff you want to know. I think hands down, one of the beers I reach for the most often is one that we made literally in my backyard years ago. I will admit that as our team has grown, it's gotten better, frankly, than when I was making it in the first place, but nonetheless, it is to this day like one of our base beers that we've always offered, and that's Town and Country. It's a blonde ale, and it was designed to be accessible and easy drinking. I don't know what it is. It's like I've gone full circle. When we opened the brewery in 2014, making beers with weird adjuncts and crazy flavor combinations and pushing boundaries was what I was interested in, and we still do a lot of that. One of the other beers here is made with raspberry and rhubarb, so we'll get to that in a second. But I find myself increasingly interested in something classic, understated, easy, and refreshing, and that's to me what Town and Country does so well. Not too many beers would like reach for a brown can. I think, there's something different about that. It's sort of meant to be inspired by kind of like a provincial park vibe. And I think that's like where it belongs, is like cooking outside in a cooler, ideally sleeping under a tent, something like that. But for me, it's just kind of a great beer to have anytime. And I would pair this with, there's a smoked fish vendor at the Ottawa Farmers Market called Bubbly, and they do an amazing job taking regional fish and selling the smoked fish. So if you had that, it's some cheese, it would work with anything you want to grill. It's like pretty classic, versatile. Two Flags IPA is actually another one that we made from the start. It's a beer that we really wanted to get at kind of the mission of what we were doing with Dominion City. So we brew it exclusively with hops grown here in our region. So either Western Quebec or here in Ontario. For those who don't know, hops are these tiny, beautiful little cone flowers that grow vertically up a vine, and they're essential for making beer. They add texture, they're a natural preservative. If you open up a can of IPA and you smell pineapple or pine notes or tropical fruit, almost invariably it's hop aromatics that are giving you those flavors. We actually have the ability, and for a long time grew hops here. As beer became a commodity, our whole industry kind of died and disappeared. So part of our mission is actually how do we make not only beer here in Ottawa, but how do we make beer of Ottawa? So, we try to buy malted barley that's grown here in Ontario, and we've made a mission of having a beer we make year round that's actually using local agriculture. So it's one of my favorites for that reason. It's also just really refreshing. At 7%, it does sneak up on you. So after 2, don't make any big plans, but it's awesome to have the spicy food. I find like it's a great pairing with nachos or burritos. A lot of Mexican cooking would really lend itself to some of the hoppy, sort of piney, resiny notes. So I love it for that. Last beer I'm going to talk about today is one that we only make once a year, and it seems to be one that people wait for every year. Come May, they're asking, when is the raspberry beer back? So it's a beer we made, again, back in the early days, and it's sort of one of the few that continues. In any given year, by the way, we make about 50 different beers. So there's sort of 3 we make all the time and a bunch that kind of come around once or twice a year. Picnic Blanket is one of those, and it's made with a whole lot of fresh raspberry and rhubarb. It's a saison, which for those who don't know is sort of a Belgian-inspired kind of beer. It's sort of rustic. It's, the base beer itself would kind of have a lot of like white pepper, earthy, grassy notes. It's very dry. It's a little bit tangy. I wouldn't put it in the sour category, but it's like tangy, approaching tart. And then you sort of amp that up with rhubarb and raspberry. And it's one that people love. It's perfect for a picnic. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah, those are kind of the beers I brought, but there's lots of other things we can talk about on beer. In terms of seltzer pairing, I mean, I already kind of talked about, I think Cool Melon begs for gin if you want to gussy this up as a cocktail. I think you really can't go wrong. I think a lot of those kind of herbal juniper notes that you're going to get from gin work with the cucumber and gin is already like a great combo, but the cantaloupe's a really neat extra layer. Berry whip's a whole lot of fun. Anything you want to make with egg whites, I think like berry whip is like the one I'd reach for with that. You can make something kind of unctuous and delicious. It'd be like great kind of start like pre-dinner cocktails with something like that. To me, what I use them for, actually, like, I'm not a huge home cocktail maker, if I'm being totally transparent and honest with you, but it's a great way to have something refreshing on a Tuesday when like I don't really feel like having a beer. And believe it or not, even though I own a brewery, there are those days. I think balance is one of those things that needs to be emphasized and protected for all of us as well. And like not every day is a beer day. So, a City Seltzer is crisp. City Citrus is crisp and refreshing. And the orange cream was the first flavor we ever made. And I think it's the one that people probably reach for the most often. It's got like this nice kind of creamy vanilla note, but it's also got like a nice healthy tension with like the citrusy orange inside. And it just kind of works with a lot of different food. So finger food and City Citrus is the way to go. Anyway, I'm happy to keep going, but I actually can't see my clock here. So I don't know where I'm at with time, Bonnie, but if we want to do a couple questions, I can kind of jump off a few different things.
Yeah, no, that was great, Josh. Thank you so much. I'm trying to like take mental notes of everything you said so that I know what I'm having for dinner tonight. One of the questions that did come towards the start of the event was, what was the motivation for the drive-through window? It's awesome and more should take it on.
Oh, thanks. We were really lucky that our building has got a horseshoe parking lot. So we were sort of set up without a whole lot of having to squint and imagine. But obviously during the last year and a half, we kind of had to build a fortress around our brewery, and we've really kind of just kept the public out, which is very unusual for particularly a community-based business. So the window was literally just intended to be that. It's a way for us to have a connection point, keep people coming to the brewery, with the idea being that you can order ahead on our website, and your order can basically be ready, and you don't even have to get out of your car, or we can just put it in your trunk for you. So I mean, to be honest with you, I think a few years ago I would have thought it might have been a little bit of an off-center idea, and I'm not sure we would have leapt for it, but I'm really glad we did. I think a lot of people in a lot of facets of life has taken the last year and a half to reassess, and for us, this has kind of led to like a physical reassessment of how we're going to use the brewery space. So the back corner of the building used to literally be a pile of packing supplies that we weren't using that well, and we turned it into literally a corner store at the corner of our building, and we're going to keep the drive-through window going for as long as people want it.
That's also, I'm also a fan of drive-through windows, so I love that.
My sense is this is not going anywhere. I think there's going to be new things in your life that you're going to want to shop for this way for a long time to come.
For sure. Yeah. And just a quick question here in the chat is, are all these beers currently available at the store?
Yeah, they are. So you can order ahead on our website at any time. We've got a selection of all the beers that are available now. We've also, one of the changes that's come in the last little while is we've been able to bring in a kind of curated list of stuff that we like from our friends, small scale Ontario winery, cideries, and breweries. So we've also got a selection that you can shop from breweries that we admire. So friends of ours in the industry. You can do that in store, or again, it's all on our website. And it's been great to have people come and buy.
That's awesome. And I'm very curious about this next question as well. Do you have reopening event plans yet?
Yes. So we hadn't put a beer in a glass and handed it to anybody for over a year and a half until basically 3 or 4 weeks ago when we opened our beer garden. So right now in our parking lot, in addition to kind of our little treehouse patio that we opened a couple years ago, we had like 3 pine trees in this underused corner of our parking lot that we built this elevated patio in. We've extended that now with the beer garden, and it is a literal beer garden. We are growing food for our local food bank. So we've got like fresh veg growing. We did our first harvest last week. So when you come and join us for a beer, you're literally sitting in a sort of a food oasis in a business park, which is kind of fun. But that's where we're starting, is having people back. Trying to have a little bit of purpose woven into it as well. We've got a bakery that's just opened down the building that's doing fresh sandwiches, and you can buy snacks and other things there and enjoy them outside. So we're just hoping for some decent weather and getting people back here.
That's awesome. I don't know how everyone else hears, but the moment you hear beer garden, it's just like it lights up your spirit and your energy. So I love hearing you talk about that. Another question that's come through is this person loves the collabs that you do with other breweries. Any sneak peeks of collabs coming soon, or any little tidbits of information that you could share with us? And a follow-up to that as well is any breweries that you haven't worked with, but you would like to.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't mind giving a little sneak peek. August is going to be a big collaboration month. And for those who, maybe aren't following beer closely, this is one of the, I think, the best things about Ontario's beer industry is people tend to be more collaborative than competitive. And I mean, there's so many other people who are like us. There's small businesses who are really focused on serving their home communities. And when we talk, you can learn a lot. And so teaming up and making a beer at our place, or we have to travel, or in the last little while have done virtual collaborations where we'll kind of cook up an idea that gets brewed at the other person's brewery. We got 3 of those happening at our brewery in the next couple weeks. So sort of the latter half of the summer, we should have a few. 2 of them are with breweries we've never worked with before. And one of those for me is Collective Arts, who I grew up in Southern Ontario. They're from Hamilton, and we've always been, admirers of what they do. So we're going to be cooking up a beer with them. We just released one that they're actually selling right now on their end. So one of the beers that we kind of imagined together is actually made with strawberry, basil, and locally grown hops and barley, which is sort of cool. But we're going to be doing something here. And then there's a small little farm distillery that's now started making beer called Willibald. They're in a tiny little town called Ayr, Ontario. And they're making, I think, hands down, some of the best hoppy beer in Ontario these days. So they're coming to share some of their knowledge, and we're going to cook something up together.
That's awesome. And I'm always curious, is it like you and your team drive around to different breweries like all the time trying to like test out beers, or like how does that work? Or are you guys just like kind of you stick to your own and like you know what you like best, or are you guys just always constantly trying new beers at different breweries as well?
Try to keep an open mind. I mean, some of the best things, one of the beers I don't have up here that some people may be familiar with is a beer called Sunsplit. That was literally born from a year of R&D. At our first anniversary, we went to Vermont for an overnight trip, and we were drinking beer in Vermont and talking to brewers, and they were selling beer that you'd never recognize in Ontario in 2014. It was hazy, and it was like rich, and instead of being bitter, it was leaning entirely on sort of the tropical aromatic notes that hops can give you. At the time, hoppy beers tended to be quite resinous and sort of bitter. And it took us a while to kind of work through the idea, but we created a beer called Sunsplit that today is our best-selling beer, and probably one of the ones that we're best known for. So I think it pays to keep an open mind. People's tastes change, and being able to offer something, as those things change is important. So yeah, talking to people is a huge piece of that.
That's awesome. And I love the names and even the visuals of your products as well. I'm also sorry if I'm feel free to keep the questions and comments going. Till we get another question, I'm going to ask all the questions that I have with Dominion. When you have to think of like a name or something, does it just like you stare at the product, or you're just drinking the product and then inspiration hits, or like is it kind of you come up with the name first and then you try to gather those ingredients? How does that thought process kind of work for your products?
Yeah, it's fun. I appreciate you asking that question, because 7 years in, there's a lot of things that I don't do anymore. We've got more talented people than I'll ever be at making beer, who are really leading on making the beer. And these days, my job is sort of driving the bus. But one thing I've sort of not let go of is being the guy who gets to name the beer. So a lot of that still kind of gets to be me, which is a lot of fun. And so for me, honestly, the inspiration tends to be things that are close to me. They're often, writers or books or other things. We have a series of beers that we make. It's a wine beer hybrid, and we source all the grapes from a winery in Prince Edward County. They're from this little town called Hillier. And my favorite Canadian poet, Alberti, that was his home. So the series of sort of beer wine hybrid beers we make are called Wilderness Gothic, after one of my favorite poems by him. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of kind of just, there's no shortage. I keep a list, and then yeah, you sort of like, what are we making, and what's the right vibe to draw from the list. But you try to make sure you write a note down when you think of something.
You're almost like a songwriter or a rapper, when you just get those words and you have to write them down and then refer to them later. I love that.
Fortunately for you, I'm not going to sing today, so you're good.
Yeah. Another question that's come up in the chat is, what would you usually pair with town and country? Is it like burger, grilled fishes, veggie dishes? What would you recommend?
Yeah, there's so much you can do with a beer like that. It's very versatile, but like often what I think you're looking for when you're thinking about pairing beer is you're looking for complementary and contrast, and depending on what you're after, you can kind of go either direction. But like, because it's crisp, it's not a lager, but it is pretty dry and refreshing. It is an awesome sort of additive to anything rich or creamy. So, in the cooler months, I think having like a creamy cheese or something like that would work really well with it. I also love it with whitefish. I think it works really, really well with fish. But then you can also just dive straight into like rich burger fry land as well, right? Like, something like that. I don't know. But the other thing too is like a lot of people, I think I'm trying to cook more vegetables and eat less meat these days. So some of these like lighter things, particularly city seltzer, like I love it with different salads. So my partner Gabby's far more creative than I am at coming up with ideas for not making like tomato, pepper, and greens salads. But anytime you get into like more inventive toppings and ingredients, I find like seltzer is a nice way to jump off and have some of those ingredients really sing.
That's awesome. And a next question is, are there any flavors or ingredients that you've wanted to use in a beer and haven't tried yet, or any combinations that you're hoping to get on the menu soon?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two things for sure. I mean, we're always really interested in working with Indigenous ingredients that are like from here. One of the beers we actually have right now is made with friends of ours from the Algonquin Anishinaabe community in Kitigan-Zibi. And we actually went out with a kit from a lab that we work with, and we've harvested local yeast. So it's like wild yeast that was like on bark and wild fruit. Taking it back to the lab, we've isolated a strain that we know will work to ferment a beer. And you're gonna get a completely wild card flavor from the beer we fermented. So it's been in barrel for a year, and we've used this yeast source that like literally no one else has got. So I'm like really keen to try that. But in that same vein, we've been trying to build up all the pawpaw fruit that we can get for the last few years. For those who don't know, it's like a fruit that predates any European contact or agriculture in North America. They kind of look a little bit like a cross between a mango, banana, and an avocado. And they're like custardy. That's sort of, if you can imagine those kind of combos.
I was trying, you saw my brain. I was trying to picture those three things together. Yeah.
They're hard to find, but they're delicious. So pawpaw fruit, top of my list. And then the other thing is I'd love to use cloudberries. They're really hard to come by. They grow in the wild in Newfoundland, Labrador, kind of like far north, but they're just like bright, and it would be awesome to be able to make a beer with cloudberry.
Oh, that's awesome. And the next question that's popped up here, I think we have time for these last two that are in the chat. The first one is, what kind of beer and wine do you use to create the hybrid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this Wilderness Gothic series that I kind of alluded to, it always is almost a 50-50 blend of fresh pressed grape juice and a base beer that we make. Tends to be in that sort of like farmhousey Belgian Saison style. They're always fermented in wood, so they're in retired wine barrels for a prolonged period of time. And the series is actually different grape varietals. So we've done Gamay, we've done Vidal, we've got a Riesling, and we've done Pinot skins. So yeah, lots of different ones. And it's neat to use the same base beer and have the wild card really be like the fresh pressed fruit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this next question, and it'll be our last one for the session, is what is the hardest part about using natural sugars from fruit or others rather than exclusively from the worth? Did I pronounce that correctly? From the worth. Does it need a second fermentation to not taste too sweet, or does it need a higher proof yeast? So I think that was a very technical.
Someone's a home brewer for sure. But yeah, just that's a great point, because what you're doing essentially when you're making an alcoholic drink is you're converting sugar into ethanol. And so that's like a process that's super well understood from taking sugar from barley and other grains to make regular beer. But when you're adding fruit, it's obviously like super high in sugar. And there's a risk that if it's not done fermenting, by the time you put it in a can, well, now it's in an enclosed vessel. If it's still fermenting, it's creating CO2. There's actually a risk that it can explode. So I think patience is probably the biggest thing. If you're going to add a ton of sugar after fermentation, you want to make sure that it's done fermenting for sure by the time you go to put it in an enclosed vessel. Yeah.
I just learned something new as well today, so thank you so much. And I know this session has just whizzed by with all of this super helpful info. And I just want to take this time right now. Thank you, Josh. I want to hear more, but unfortunately our Beer, Bubbles, and Buddies session has quickly just swooped by. We're going to share all of your company's social and Instagram and website in the chat. So please, everyone, check them out. There's some great products on there. The Instagram is super colorful. So if you like the session, be sure to check it out. And as mentioned, this is recorded. So if you wanted to refer to it later, it is hosted on our AC Hub On Demand website. And Joss, any closing remarks or any last, tonight, this is what you guys should all be indulging in. Any final remarks for us?
I hope you drink something delicious and can find a way to relax. It's almost the end of the week. I just thank you guys so much for the interest and for making time and having me. So I look forward to getting back to the college at some point.
That's awesome. And hopefully we can definitely bring you for an in-person session as well. I think everyone would love that for a pouring session on campus. So hopefully we can make that possible as well. So thank you so much everyone for tuning in. Big shout out to Josh again. Maybe I will go check out again that drive-through window sometime soon. And be sure to check out all of the other AC Summer Market events happening. Fun-filled day ahead. If you enjoyed this one, there's more to come. So be sure you check out the events page. And thank you so much, everyone. And it is now closely the noon hour. So we hope you have something fun to drink and something delicious to eat. So thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.